Welcome, everyone. I'm Jesse Mogul. Thank you for tuning in to the American Contingency Podcast. Here at AmCon, we are a united nationwide community of dedicated Americans ready to face any challenge that comes our way. Our mission is to inform you by equipping you with the knowledge and training you need to prepare for any man-made or natural disaster. And through active participation in our community, you'll have the opportunity to grow by learning from others' experiences and sharing your own. Together, we build resilience and strength through shared knowledge and mutual support. And as always, it is an honor and a privilege to have you here for another beautiful episode of the American Contingency Podcast. And we have our favorite guest, our fearless leader, Thom Rigsby, on the microphone today. Welcome yourself. It's always a pleasure to have you, brother.
Man, it's always a pleasure to be here. I enjoy having these talks.
I do too. It has been an amazing year for American Contingency in 2024. Great growth with our membership, a tremendous adventure challenge in all of our regions. I was able to attend the Southeastern one. It was a fantastic experience. Started a fire in the woods and got to barter my way through a trail. I cannot even, it was what such a blast. What would you like to discuss when it comes to reviewing 2024 and what American Contingency was able to succeed at? And of course, I'm sure you've got ideas of where you'd like to see everything go in the future.
Yeah, this is the time of year where you start thinking about these things and, where have we come from? What have we achieved? What do we want to achieve moving forward? And so a couple of days ago, I sat down to start just kind of jotting down some notes. And there's a lot. We've accomplished a lot over the last year, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to call out, just to call everybody's attention to. And you mentioned one of them was the adventure challenges. That's something that started as an idea with a local chapter, which we'll talk more about local chapters in a few minutes. But it started with a local chapter and it kind of grew from that. I saw that event and thought, man, this would be great to have everywhere. Every region had at least one adventure challenge this year. And it's really just a time to get together, to meet other members, to spend time with them, get to know them, and to test your skills and capabilities, but do it in a fun way. And kind of, put a real world twist on it, just to make it interesting. I mean, and, we keep score and we gave away prizes and whatnot, but the real prize is being able to test your skills, test your mettle, so to speak, and kind of know where you are when it comes to your level of preparedness. The big takeaway that I encouraged everybody to look for after those events, and I encourage everybody now to do this, is to look for gaps. It's really easy to say, oh, well, I'm really good at so and so. I'm really good at communications. I'm really good at food and water. I've got 10 years worth of food in the basement. Okay, great. How's your mobility? How's your health? How's your security and defense? All of these things, they all work together. They're not, you can't take any one of them out and silo it and say, okay, I'm good to go. So look for those gaps and look for ways to test those gaps, and just be better prepared for those crisis moments when they come. So that was the adventure challenge. We had those. Those were a lot of fun. The other thing that I'm really proud of is that through several events throughout the year, but predominantly following Hurricane Helene, we distributed. So the members of AmCon paid for, and we distributed through various channels over 1,000 disaster relief kits to people who had lost, in a lot of cases, they had lost everything. And these kits are not, they're not a replacement for the things that they lost. It's a starting point for what they're going to have moving forward, right? A real towel and a real washcloth, and just a little cinch drawstring, kind of backpack to keep all the stuff in, the comb and the bar of soap. Little things like that that help you begin to establish a path forward again when everything that you had has just been yanked out from underneath you. And I lean on this story a lot because a couple of years ago there were some tornadoes that went through um, Mississippi, and when we called down there and said, "Hey, what can we do to help?" the local emergency manager said, "We need totes, like the plastic, 25-gallon totes." Said, "Okay, that's an interesting request. How many do you need?" As many as you can get. Okay, why do you need them? Well, because the people down here have lost everything, and they're walking around town looking for bits and pieces of their lives that literally are scattered all over town, and they don't even have a box to put them in. So if we could get some totes, that would help. And that's kind of and we had a member so we put that message out. We had a member that said, "I have thousands of these things from my business. I'll get them on the way." And she loaded them up on a truck and had one of her employees drive them down, and we met, kind of ferried them down. And it was a little thing that we were able to do, but that kind of set me on the course of the idea behind these disaster relief kits. And just the bag, to me, maybe the two or three most important things in this kit are the bag, the towel, and the washcloth. Mainly because, man, just to have a real washcloth that you can wash your face with makes a big difference. And to have a bag that you can begin to collect your new life in makes a huge difference. So the fact that we were able to put all those together, get those distributed, that's a thing that I'm proud of that our network did. We didn't do that. The network of people did that. And so I love telling that story. Even though it's based under hard circumstances, I think it really illustrates the heart of who makes up American Contingency, and that makes me proud to tell that story.
Well, how cool is it that we had a member who was able to get those totes? Like, just had a storage facility full of these totes.
Yeah, we never know, and that's one of the challenges, of an online network of people is that all you know about them are the things that they choose to share. And I guess, that's probably true in face-to-face relationships also. But it's one of the reasons why I really like doing all the face-to-face events is so we get to meet people and spend time with them and kind of learn about them more than just what their screen name and their city is. We actually learn things about them and actually build relationships with them. And it's through that, it's through those processes that we build these channels of communication where we can put out requests like that, and people feel comfortable responding to those requests and donating time, talent, and resources to help other people.
When you look at what you've been able to create with the entire team, as far as American Contingency, its reach, its membership, and what brings you the most satisfaction with how you're seeing the members utilizing the network in a way that maybe you hadn't even thought that they could, let alone would, what is something that sort of surprised you that came out of all of this?
Wow, that's a great question. There's a lot of desire among the members for community, and we kind of overuse the term community, and we've applied it to well, if you're in a chat room with me, then we're in community with one another. It's more than that, right? They want someone that they can rely on. They want someone who they can call when they have a flat tire or they're just having a bad day. And so we get requests, frequently to help me find a chapter that's close to me, help me start a chapter, help me just find the people that are close to me. And, the people that exercise that initiative, that reach out and initiate those contacts and those relationships, those people, um, they're kind of living and breathing what we want AmCon to be. And so it's always encouraging to hear those, to see those. In terms of things that I never thought of, there are stories for every one of the stories like the totes that I know of. I'm sure that there are others that I haven't heard, right? That they just don't make it to me. And it's that, in a sense, it is that ongoing community without us directing it that I'm proud of, right? That makes me feel good about what we're doing.
It is the community. We talk so much about that, right? It's the members, it's what they're doing. And a lot of it takes their own ambition, their own drive to create it at a local level that means something to them. At the national level, you only have so much control over what you can get people on the local level to do. You can provide a lot of resources. You can certainly build up an amazing website with a ton of trainings, and certainly the communication channels that exist because of the efforts that you've put on the back end. But nothing is going to take the place of the people on the ground meeting once every Saturday or every other week and being able to actually create that community that we talk about. But we can't promise it because it really is about the people on the micro level getting together and creating that for themselves. And I think when you look at it at that scope, it's amazing that you've been able to take all these 6 regions and all of these thousands of people and get them on one pursuit, and then watching everybody create it for themselves in the way that's unique to their environment.
Yeah, and it's fun to watch when it's working well, and it's challenging to watch when it's not. And one of the things, and this is kind of leaning in toward what we want to look to see happen in 2025. But right now, it's difficult for us to track the numbers precisely, but I think we're somewhere around 20%, between 15 and 20% of our members are active in a local chapter. And I'd like to flip that number in 2025 so that instead of 80% not being in a chapter, I'd like to have 80% in a chapter. In order to do that, we're going to have to start a lot of chapters.
Yeah.
And consequently, when you do that, and we were talking a little bit before we started the recording about success and failure, and we'll start 300 chapters this year, and maybe half of them don't make it to the end of the year. Well, that's okay, because half of them did. And those half, that half that did, the members that are in those chapters are now engaged in a way that they were not before. And they're finding that community, and they're finding that value that goes along with being part of a local network and a nationwide, or a local chapter and a nationwide network. And so, I've challenged the RCs with this 300 new chapter number, and I think their eyes get a little big every time I mention it, and they're worried. And at least one of them said, "Well, I don't know that we can start that many." I'm like, well, aim small, miss small. So,
Yeah.
let's try, and just know going into it that I'm okay. That if all of them don't survive the year, that's okay. But people get the most value from AmCon when they're in a local chapter, and that is really going to be a push that we put a lot of effort behind for 2025. This idea of local first. Be a part of your local chapter first. Don't be a keyboard warrior, and then when a big giant disaster like Helene happens, want to jump into a truck with some folks from the neighborhood and go save people 3 states away. That's not what we're about. We're about saving people, helping people, supporting people that are 3 doors down, not 3 states down, right? And if we can do that, if we can get ourselves, our own house, our own community, our own neighborhood in order, then that puts us in a great place to be able to expand outward from there. So there'll be a lot of talk in 2025 about local first, building those 300 chapters and getting as many members as we can into a chapter.
I like this. I like this idea you're moving toward, and it makes me think of what happened recently in Athens. So for those of you not familiar with Thom and I's relationship, he's in the family, I'm in the family, and we live like 30 minutes away from each other. And while we're both in Madison County, you're technically out there in the boonies somewhere off the grid. You got deer for next door neighbors, and I live smack dab in the middle of Madison where they just built a brand new Costco. So when I think about this local first idea, like there's a Madison County branch, and I think there's also like a Huntsville branch of American Contingency, but there should be a let's get a Madison one going. And with Athens recently, that tornado struck very quickly, so quickly that they couldn't even get the sirens up. And while there was certainly destruction, as if there was a chapter in Athens, they may have been overwhelmed by the need, and then a Madison chapter and a Huntsville chapter could step in. I mean, they build like a Costco up the street from my house, and there's another one 23 minutes away. They're building some rock and roll sushi place right up the street from my house. There's another one that's like 17 minutes away. If we can have all of these different stores, and because people don't want to drive 17 minutes up to 72, certainly it behooves us as a membership driven organization to be looking for ways that Athens and Decatur and Madison and Huntsville all have their own. Everybody drives 15 minutes to meet up other members, and if their community gets hit, like Athens recently did, now the Decatur and the Huntsville and the Madison chapters can step in, because they're, like you said, 3 doors down in this metaphor, further than 3 doors, but certainly not 3 states where somebody's got to take off work and really put a lot of effort to drive 900 miles versus, hey, let's just get up the road 17 miles away. People need our help. Let's help them now.
Yeah. One of the things that is very well known in emergency management is that the people in the affected area are not going to be able to respond, right? So, you think about, we'll just continue with this Athens analysis. If the tornado hit and damaged the firehouse such that they couldn't get the trucks out of the building, well, they're not going to be able to respond to the hundreds of people around town that are calling for help, right? So who's going to be, and you've probably seen it in your neighborhood. I think we all see this after a storm blows through or after the earthquake or, whatever, everybody just kind of wanders out into the parking lot, onto the sidewalk. And, wow, did you feel that? Did you see that? Dude, you got a big limb down your yard. Let me get my chainsaw and we'll cut it up. Those things happen immediately, but then even in a devastating circumstance, if the house is destroyed by a tornado, it's the neighbors who are going to be the literal first responders who get there. And it might be hours before the, quote, professional first responders get there. So, that's why we have this focus on local first. But then the value that comes out of being part of a network is that we can standardize and normalize training across all of our chapters, so that when that chapter from Huntsville and Decatur or Fayetteville comes to help the chapter in Athens, we all have a common set of radio language that we use, common set of radio frequencies that we know how to use. We've got, common practices in how we manage personnel, and we kind of have all those systems worked out. And if you don't have that, then you've got all these disparate groups of people who, in a moment of crisis, try to form an ad hoc group that, can't manage to get a truckload of 3 people and 2 chainsaws out of a parking lot. So that's kind of the value of local and the value of being in a network all in one really long wordy sentence.
I like your wordy sentences. I think that they're packed with information. If people slow down and listen, they gather that, right? Yeah, I've certainly in California remember, an earthquake and happening, and everybody going outside and okay, my house is good. Let's look at everybody else's, and they just sort of stand around and chit chat. And if we found out that somebody's, whole block got leveled 3 blocks over, what would we actually do? Well, we might want to run
Right.
over and start helping move debris and look for, survivors or somebody's cat, but without that uniform training, which is what American Contingency provides, people can show up who say, okay, I've been trained in this. Let's come up with a coordinated effort. And now we can move forward with everybody wanting to help, but having someone who at least has a modicum of knowledge about, okay, this is the best way to move us forward. And let's just get doing something. And then
Right.
as we start to do something, we'll start to realize there's other things that need to be done, and we'll coordinate those as we go along.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's the micro view and the macro view of our whole training program rolled up in one nutshell.
So there's a lot we've covered, and there's a lot going on in 2025. We discussed some of that ambition, having 80% of the members actually in an active chapter, and that might require there being, a chapter that is literally 20 minutes of drive from another chapter, which again, I think is very advantageous for people in their local communities to work on. But there's a spinoff that we want to discuss in this episode because some changes are coming to the American Contingency Way, and I think it'd be really great for all the listeners to know this from the horse's mouth per se, because I know you're super excited to discuss this topic as well.
Well, since our inception, AmCon has been related to fieldcraft survival. We share a common founder in the person of Mike Glover. And, we've gone through, it's over the 3.5, maybe 4 years that I've had this job. Over that time, we've gone through several different permutations of relationships. But as we enter into 2025, I think we're entering kind of a maturation level here. So we're going to spin off AmCon away from Fieldcraft, make AmCon its own standalone entity. Fieldcraft is going through some of their own changes right now, and part of those changes kind of necessitated, or maybe not necessitated, but certainly made it an opportune time to do this spinoff. So we're going to stand on our own 2 feet, so to speak, be our own entity. That's going to give us an opportunity to do a lot of the things that, some of them we've talked about here today, but it's going to give us an opportunity to do a lot of the things that we've been limited in some of the things that we could do. Some of those limitations get removed, and we're able to, it's my intention, certainly my desire to deliver greater value to our members, and through our members deliver greater value to our communities. Because at the end of the day, all these things that we've talked about today that happened in 2024 and that are going to happen in 2025, and whether we're a subsidiary of Fieldcraft or not, at the end of the day, the goal is to help more people be prepared to meet their next crisis moment head on. That's it. That's the whole thing, right? All of these things that we've talked about are just ways that we help people do that. They're tools that we use to teach and organize and train and inform and equip. But that's what we want to see happen. And, back to your question earlier about, things that I have seen this year that kind of surprised me from the network. When chapters take this admonition to heart, right, that this goal of helping more people be prepared, and they find ways to go out and do that in their own community, those things, I won't say it surprises me, but those are the things that make me look at that chapter and go, these folks have got it. They've grasped the idea, and they are running with it. And I want to throw resources behind them and support them because they're headed in the right direction. So, again, at the end of the day, that's our goal. All of these things are just, kind of our ideas to help facilitate or force some of these things to happen. But we want people to be better prepared and not, we want to get people out of that sense of anxiety over the next crisis moment. And, when it happens, they can go, oh, okay, I know what to do, or I know how to navigate my way through this. Even if I don't know the exact steps, A, B, C, and D, I know how to navigate my way through this crisis moment and come out okay on the other side. And, as you and I have talked a lot in the past, anxiety releases a bunch of hormones in your body that are bad for your body, and confidence releases a bunch that are good. And so we want those good chemicals coursing through everybody's bloodstream.
Yes, I find that the more you put yourself out there and try things that are uncomfortable, the more you get comfortable in that uncomfortableness, which increases that confidence. A lot of people, even me, Adventure Challenge, let's take that into account. I didn't come there prepared. Multiple people had to loan me items just to be able to take the course that day. Hadn't practiced any of that stuff. But yet, here I am in the woods with wet material, starting up a fire while my partner is building us a structure for shelter. And just being able to do that stuff and walk away and say, okay, with very little preparation, i.e. none, and no practice and no supplies, I was able to have the community help me, and I was able to fulfill the desires from that, from the novice stage, if you will. And that gives me confidence to say, oh, okay, something I had never done before. I was successful. Let's reevaluate what I've done. Let's be more prepared in the future. And instead of feeling stressed out and having anxiety, I'm like, okay, put me in a situation. I will figure it out. I think a lot of people might doubt themselves in that regard. And I think American Contingency offers opportunities for them to do some things outside their comfort zone, realize that they are capable. And then once they have that feeling inside them, instead of anxiety and stress, they're able to come at a lot of different situations with a stability, a groundedness that comes from taking action and the actual participation in the activities that we talk so much about.
Well, I think you're spot on there. I think people, when we experience what we've labeled uncomfortable, right? You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Growth occurs outside your comfort zone. All these things talk about being uncomfortable. What we're really talking about, if we substituted the phrase fear of the unknown for being uncomfortable, that's really what we're talking about, right? Growth occurs through fear of the unknown. I want to build this fire, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do it the right way. And I'm not sure if I do this, it will work. And I'm not sure if, so I have this fear of the unknown. If I try to make this fire and this person watching me and evaluating me is going to think, he doesn't even know how to start a fire, right? All of these things pour into and fuel that fear of the unknown. Well, when we have that hands-on experience, even if we are unsuccessful in starting a fire, for example, the hands-on experience allows us to build some neural pathways and create so it reduces the level of the unknown and increases the level of confidence. So the next time the need comes along to start a fire, you can say, oh, yeah, I've done this before. I wasn't great at it, but I know what I need to do. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's that trade-off of fear of the unknown, trading that away for that increased level of confidence, that, if we can do that in 2025, that's really what helps us meet that goal of helping more people be prepared. We could restate that goal and say to help more people feel confident and ready to meet their next crisis moment. And it would mean exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And there's a power that comes from, I really feel like you want to take on, we talk a lot about leadership, and there's that need to take on your own leadership in your own life, and then that helps facilitate that for your family and for your community. And so for so many other aspects, but it starts first with the person deciding that they want to make this change, and then finding steps and taking action to make that change.
Man, we are standing on the edge of a very deep pool with our toes just hanging over the edge. We can go down a rabbit hole here. But yeah, I agree 100%. It begins with understanding where you are, whether that's in what needs to go in your get home bag, whether it's what medical training do you need to take next, whether it's what radio should I buy. All of those things begin with an understanding of where you are and where you want to go, and making decisions that constantly move you toward where you want to go. You will inevitably make mistakes. You'll take wrong turns. You'll go down a rabbit hole and buy 15 different kinds of the same radio to test and see which one's best, and then find out that it's none of those. It's this other thing. But if you maintain that goal and you're constantly doing an azimuth check or a route check and make sure that you're pointed at that goal and that all decisions are moving you toward that goal, then ultimately you're going to get there. People think about, like Christopher Columbus days, right? I'll throw a good name for you out here, Amerigo Vespucci. As these explorers were in their wind-driven ships sailing across the ocean, we kind of think they, kind of sailed in this straight line, but they did not sail in a straight line. They zigzagged, they moved left, they moved right, north, south, and but they knew that if at the end of the day they were pointing toward the sun as it went down over the horizon, that they were going in the right direction, then they could have these little zigzaggy lines. And it's like driving to work every day. You don't drive in a dead straight line from your driveway to the parking lot. You make left turns and right turns, but you're constantly moving in that direction. You have to make all these little adjustments. And it's okay to make those adjustments. I think that's the thing that I want people to understand is, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. Nobody's perfect the first time, or the second or the third time, but understand what you need to work on. Make a commitment to working on those. It's a 1% improvement every time you try something. After 72 iterations, you'll have 100% improvement if you make a 1% improvement, something like that. But just commit to improvement, identifying gaps and trying to fill those gaps in whatever aspect of life you're looking at.
Well, I think that's one of the beautiful things that we can really discuss when, as we close this up, is that with American Contingency, we tried a lot of things and we've moved forward in certain ways and liked the way that it took us. And in other times we're like, okay, let's reevaluate that. But the key, I believe, and I talk about this on my other shows, I talk about this in my other career, is that it's all about taking action. And you don't really get to have any output at all if you just stand still and deliberate. Like you said earlier, if you got a truckload of dudes and ladies all standing in a parking lot with multiple chainsaws trying to discuss which way they should turn whenever they leave the parking lot, and you're waiting for all the lights to be green before you go anywhere, then you're not really going anywhere. And you're all going to sit there and hem-haw around versus, okay, we got chainsaws, we've got a truck. Let's just drive around and start looking for trees that are down in the road, and we'll just start moving those. And eventually we'll get to some place that has 1,000 trees and they really needed us, but we'll never would have found that place had we not just left the parking lot and turned left and just said, find a tree, let's cut a tree.
Right. That's 100%. And that's, that's the goal. And I go back to this idea. We talk about, we've got these different concepts that we try to repeat pretty often, but me, my family, my community, get yourself squared away first, right? Have your things squared away. Then work on getting your family, your home. I want to use the word homestead, but I don't. You get your family squared away, and then work on getting your community squared away. In your community, if you live in a subdivision, you probably have room for 2 or 3 AmCon chapters in that one subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So your community might be as small as your cul-de-sac, or it could be as large as your subdivision or your city. Whatever that is, though, strong cities are made up of strong families, and strong families are made up of strong people. So, get yourself in order, get your family in order, get your community in order.
I like that too. It goes back to that saying, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. If you don't have food and water in your own home, then you can't, be supplying yourself, and therefore your family's in need. And how much are you really going to be able to help the community if you are yourself looking for sustenance? And then you can have sustenance for yourself. You can have sustenance for your family. Maybe you can provide a little bit more for the community, or you've gone the American contingency route and you've helped everybody else know how to prepare for themselves. And now your cul-de-sac's great. Now let's go check out what's going on the other side of the neighborhood. It's we can go macro, micro, but either way, as we go up and down this undulation, we realize that American contingency benefits people from the bird's eye view of what can we do overall, all the way down to the micro view of, do I have enough in my own home to be able to supply the ones I love? So we have the energy to get into that truck and go cut down trees for other people in need.
Right, exactly. And if we can introduce frameworks that help individuals and families answer those questions, then I'm happy with our contribution.
Well, I think that's a really great way to close us up too, is when we talk about frameworks. I mean, with this spinoff, some of us are stepping back for a little while. I know that this will be the last episode of the podcast for the near future. I know there's going to be some shuffling amongst those who are actively participating in American contingency. As these changes begin to take hold and you really start to cement down what it is you would like for American contingency to look like, what's it been like working with so many people dedicated to this desire to see American contingency grow? What does that feel like to, reshuffle the family in a way, but know that we're always just a phone call away?
It's difficult, honestly, is the answer to that question. I know that, you look across the family, in this case, I think family is a great kind of analogy. You look across the family of thousands of members across the country, what they expect, their expectations out of their family membership, each one is unique. Every person has their own desire, except that they all bring a willingness to improve. And for, people like yourself and others that have filled roles, it's a willingness to help other people. And so then when we get to an inflection point and we say, okay, let's look at what we've been doing that's working and let's do more of that. And let's look at what we've been doing that's not working, or what we've been doing that, the members or network are not finding value in, and let's do less of that. That inevitably puts us in a position where we have to say, okay, the thing that's really important to you, we're not putting the resources behind that anymore. And that's difficult, and I hate having to do that, but I think that in the end, again, it kind of comes back to this idea of making lots of little adjustments to ultimately get to your goal. I might really like driving on the interstate, right? Because you can go fast, it's controlled access, it's easy driving. But I can't get all the way from my house to my office on the interstate, right? I have to take side roads, surface streets, service roads. I have to get backed up in traffic sometimes in order to get to my destination. So I have to do the things, not just the things that we like. We have to do the things that are effective And, you know, because we have such diversity within this network of people, um, it's going to be hard for somebody all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that's just the nature of human beings and the nature of what we do. And it's not my favorite part of the job, but it is a necessary part of the job.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, some people say addition by subtraction, subtraction by
Yeah.
addition. I feel like any organization that wants to look for a long-term future has to be willing to make tough decisions, tough choices, and then work really hard to, continue to grow. Whether it's us, it's a restaurant, it could be anything. In the end, it comes down to, how are you servicing your guests, your members, your clients, however that plays out, whatever word people want to use. Ultimately, you have a membership, people who are steadfast in the belief system that aligns with what your organization is doing. And we all want American Contingency to thrive. We want to see it around for decades, and have it be one of those things where people know, like, this is where you can go to learn about the things that ultimately will help you feel some level of groundedness and stability. And 2024 was one hell of a ride. I don't know what 2025's got in store for us. This entire decade, in fact, has felt like one hell of a ride. And maybe it's because it started with COVID. I mean, hell, the century itself started off, pretty bizarrely with the Twin Towers going down. So we flipped from 99 to 2000, and we were just like, let's just keep shuffling the deck every single year, and let's just see how much more insanity our citizens can handle. And it might even be around the world where there's a lot of uncertainty. And I usually close the show by saying something along the lines, if you're looking for some level of certainty in an uncertain world, and American Contingency is the place for you. As we get you out of here on this, and what is the last podcast again for the foreseeable future, who knows, maybe one day it comes back around. But for this iteration of the American Contingency podcast, I can say that it's been one hell of a ride. I've loved being involved with it, helping be one of the voices for what we do over here. And you have your opportunity, to say hello to the members who've been here for all this time, and for those that are going to be showing up in the future who find this episode and say, man, let's have ourselves a little rap party and let's find out what's going on here. Ambitions for the future, spinoffs all coming, adventure challenges in 25. Where do you see, let's say we were able to have this conversation a year from now, what would you like to say that you've achieved at the American Contingency in 2025?
Active chapters in every state and 80% of the members in a chapter. That would be a monumental success in my book, because one that creates availability in every state, and it also means that 80% of our members are actively engaged helping their neighbors. And if we do that, then we're being successful in our mission.
There we go. That is great. Thom has a little bit of a fire detector being a little rogue in the background, so he keeps flipping himself over into mute. But we're wrapping up the show anyways. Fire detectors, I remember when I first started working with you, the cover art, I think on My Ready Plan's Instagram page, or maybe it was even American Contingencies, was a fire extinguisher. And I pushed back. I was like, dude, this is lame. We got to have a better picture. You're like, hey, fire extinguisher, man. It's super important. And I went out and bought myself 2 fire extinguishers after that conversation. One's in the garage, one's underneath the sink in the kitchen. And still to this day, I remember that conversation we had about, I was like, dude, we need a better cover photo for our Instagram account than a fire extinguisher. And you're like, you name something more important when you have a grease fire in your kitchen than a fire extinguisher. So when a fire alarm's going off in the background, I don't think anybody can hear the beeping. I just think it's hilarious that on the last episode of the podcast, we got a fire related thing happening, and that story came to mind. And I just remember, just that and the wild adventure we've been on as we both have helped American Contingency grow. It's been one hell of a ride, dude. And I'm blessed that I was a part of it for the time I was.
Well, and I certainly feel that way too, that your contribution and the work that you've done with the podcast has been phenomenal. And I appreciate that. And I don't know everything the future holds. I mean, if I did, I would be playing cards somewhere. But we want to do it kind of goes back to what I said just a minute ago. We want to do more of the things that people find value in, that help people be better prepared. And sometimes that means shifting resources. And it's not that any one thing doesn't help. The podcast helps, but can we take those resources and apply them somewhere else and, leverage that in a different way? So I think the thing, for members and listeners to take away from this is that we're kind of eating our own dog food here, right? We're practicing what we preach. We're constantly evaluating, where we are, current conditions, and what we need to do differently. And this is how it manifests. So,
Yes.
It's just the way things work.
I love it. I love to see American Contingency thrive. I'm looking forward to hearing about the spinoffs from you when we continue to talk about this in just our normal everyday conversations that we have. What I've seen this organization do over the last years. I remember I was living in Los Angeles when you first contacted me. We used to meet every Tuesday at 3:30 my time, 5:30 yours, and you're like, yeah, I came across American Contingency and I've been doing this work for them, and I'm just volunteering right now, but I really love what they're up to and where this could go. And, from all of those years ago to where it is now as we begin 2025, when so many other organizations seem to just sort of stumble their way to non-existence at some point, we've managed to not only stick around, but to grow, to thrive, to continue being an active resource in people's lives. And, where it goes from here, let's hope 2025 is a little bit calmer than 2024. Election years always seem to be a little bit nefarious in people's lives when they roll around every 4 years. And if it's inflation and bag of chips and gas prices and interest rates and all of this uncertainty, I think it's really powerful when people can create a level of certainty in themselves that they can handle anything that comes down the pike, even if they have no clue what's coming. At least they have that resiliency to say, all right, this roll of the dice might go sideways, but we can't just sit here and stare at dice all day.
That's right. And because if you do, they're never going to move. Right.
Never going to move.
So.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thom, you go be amazing. Thanks. Good luck fixing the rogue smoke detector today.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
American Contingency community, it has been a pleasure to write the blogs for you for the last couple of years, to have been the host of this podcast for the last couple of years. I'm not saying that you won't ever hear my voice again, but for the foreseeable future, we're going to be taking a step back from the podcast, and we're going to let you guys just go and create your own amazingness. Do not forget that AmericanContingency.com is always here whenever you need us. Like I said before, in an uncertain world, we try to bring some modicum of certainty. And even if that is just you understanding that there is a version of you that has yet to be awakened that can handle anything that comes your way, when you're ready to build the skills, the network, and the confidence to be prepared for whatever comes next, join us at AmericanContingency.com. We're here when you're ready. We'll keep the fire going so you can find your way. Much love, everybody. Take care.